Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your host, Dr. Jason Jones of the Health Made Easy podcast. Welcome back. And this month, I have a topic that is super relevant to what's happening right now. If you're listening to this at the time of the recording, we're in November of 2020. Hopefully, we are on the back end of the pandemic, but we are moving into what I collectively like to call the sugar season, which is we're coming off of Halloween. We're going into, all of the holiday foods and the sugary goodies and all of that stuff, which ends up lasting all the way until, um, you know, Easter, for Pete's sake, where we're just consuming inordinate amounts of sugar, which we know suppress the immune system, but we need it even more. But the other thing that it does is it actually creates deficiencies in our body. And more specifically, what we're going to talk about this month is we're going to be talking about mineral deficiencies and why that's super important, not only for right now, but for basically every single day, week, month, year of your life. So we're going to start out with what are the top 4 common mineral deficiencies. Now, we know that our bodies need nutrients for overall good health. And most of the time, we can get these through our foods, but it is quite unfortunate that many of the Western diets, or what we would call the standard American diet, and no surprise that they call it the SAD diet, SAD, Standard American Diet, they don't contain sufficient amounts of minerals and vitamins that are essential for bodily functions. Instead, these foods are filled with things like grains, hydrogenated fats, bad oils, sugar, and we just are not getting enough fruits and vegetables, or at least meats, that contain the nutrients that we need. And the CDC reported that nearly 10% of the U.S. population is suffering from nutritional deficiencies. I'm going to disagree with them and say it's probably a whole heck of a lot more than that. And the common deficiencies, they vary by gender, age, race, ethnicity. And the reality is they create a whole ton of health problems such as digestive disorders, which is one reason we may not get the nutrients in that we need, but also things like kidney disease. These things, affect the absorption of certain vitamins and minerals, but side effects of certain medications can lower mineral stores. Restrictive diets can do it, but also unhealthy foods can do it too. Now, while your body may get enough nutrients that it needs to function optimally from a healthy diet, however, that's pretty rare. Chances are that's not going to happen. You may need to supplement, but that's not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is to go over the four most common, I would say, mineral deficiencies that are out there. There are more, but these are just the ones we're going to cover today. Number 1, iron deficiency. Iron is an essential nutrient needed for the production of red blood cells. In particular, it binds with hemoglobin to transport oxygen to the body cells. There are 2 types of dietary iron. There is heme iron, which is present only in animal meats and very high in red meat. And then there's non-heme iron, which is present in both plants and animals. The heme iron is absorbed more easily than the non-heme iron. Iron deficiencies can result in anemia, which is a condition where your body's ability to carry oxygen drops. Symptoms of iron deficiency include things like weakness, tiredness, impaired brain function, and also a weakened immune system. Now, you can get an adequate amount of good heme iron from things like organ meats, which nobody wants to eat, really. I actually enjoy them, but I can get why people wouldn't like them. Red meat, canned sardines, shellfish, but you can also get non-heme iron from things like seeds, beans, dark leafy green vegetables. Second one is going to be calcium deficiency. Now, calcium is needed to mineralize the teeth and the bones, especially during times of rapid growth. It's also essential for bone maintenance. Calcium serves as a signaling molecule that supports the function of the muscles, heart, and the nerves. And a survey conducted showed that if fewer than 22% of teenagers and fewer than 10% of adult women above 50 and fewer than 22% of men above 50 met their daily calcium recommended intake. Low calcium intake is very common, especially among older adults and women of all ages. And the symptoms usually are an increased risk of things like osteoporosis as you grow older. However, good dietary sources of calcium include things like dairy products, boned fish, and then dark green vegetables. There's that one again. Next one is iodine deficiency. Rarely talked about, super rampant because of just the lack of iodine in the diet and how it's been taken out of the food supply. Now, iodine is an important mineral needed for normal thyroid function. It's also essential for the production of thyroid hormones, which is involved in bodily processes like, brain development, growth, and bone maintenance. But iodine is needed for every regulatory gland and organ. Things like, the thyroid, the adrenal glands, which is your stress gland, your pancreas. Pretty much, every organ, tissue, cell, and system has some sort of receptor for iodine, meaning that it's going to take it and it's going to use that. But it's also a big part of your immune system, which I talk about on a separate podcast with my friend Sarah Banta. So if you haven't heard that podcast, go over and listen to the one with her. That's Sarah Banta, Banta. Unfortunately, now, iodine deficiency affects nearly 1/3 of the world's population, and it's followed with symptoms like an enlarged thyroid gland, weight gain, shortness of breath, increased heart rate. Iodine deficiency also results in developmental abnormalities and mental retardation in children. Some good dietary sources are fish, seaweed, eggs, and also dairy. Now, last one, no surprise, something I talk about a ton on my podcast, videos, blog posts, and that is magnesium deficiency. It's one of the essential minerals needed by the body, particularly bone and teeth structure. It's also involved in over 400 different enzymatic reactions in the body. And studies have shown that almost half of the U.S. population take less than the recommended amount of magnesium every single day. Magnesium deficiencies contribute to certain conditions, things like metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, and heart disease, just to name a few. And the deficiency can also be caused by things like drug use, and that's also prescription and street drug diseases. Certain diseases can be brought on by that, or can bring on a deficiency, and also reduced digestive function. But also understand, every time you contract your muscles, so if you're a heavy workout person, you are burning through a ton of magnesium every single day. It's also good for protecting your brain, so your brain will use a lot of it. The major symptoms of magnesium deficiency are things like muscle cramps, abnormal heart rhythm, restless leg syndrome, migraines, and fatigue. Some dietary sources are going to be nuts, whole grains, dark leafy green vegetables. You see that again, and also dark chocolate. And I just want to wrap up today by saying, you just need to be aware that you can be deficient in essential minerals like the ones we talked about on here. Older adults, younger women, and children, vegans, and vegetarians are at higher risk of developing mineral deficiencies. However, the best way to prevent them is to certainly have yourself a balanced diet and then supplement as necessary, except, in my opinion, magnesium and iodine, which I think almost every single person would benefit from having those. So I hope this sets the stage for what we're going to do this month. I hope you got something out of this. If you did and you have not gone over to iTunes or whatever podcast player that you're listening to this podcast on and giving us a rating and a review, that would be super helpful. If there's anything that you'd like to hear on this podcast, just drop that on there in your review, and we'll make sure to get it on there and get you guys what you need, the way you need it, keeping it simple, keeping it easy, keeping it practical. And we'll see you on the next podcast. See you later. Bye-bye.